As we've all seen by now, Nyck de Vries has been sacked from the AlphaTauri Formula 1 team and will be replaced by 8-time Grand Prix winner Daniel Ricciardo at the second Red Bull squad. Ricciardo, Red Bull's third driver this season, will be on loan to AlphaTauri for the rest of 2023. But why? What is it to gain for Red Bull at AlphaTauri? And could the switch be part of a bigger plan? In today's video, we'll dive into the details of the switch, and we'll find out why exactly right now has been the best timing for Red Bull to make this move. It seems it's all part of a much bigger plan. De Vries was not mentioned in either Red Bull's or AlphaTauri's new statements, except for AlphaTauri team principal Franz Tost, who acknowledged his valuable contribution. "I'm very pleased to welcome Daniel back into the team," said Tost. "There's no doubt about his driving skill, and he already knows many of us, so his integration will be easy and straightforward. The team will also profit a lot from his experience, as he is an 8-time Formula 1 Grand Prix winner. I would like to thank Nyck for his valuable contribution during his time with Scuderia at AlphaTauri, and I wish him all the best for the future." De Vries' dismissal comes only 10 Grand Prix into the season. De Vries, 28, was hired by Red Bull for the 2023 season after a spectacular last-minute stand-in drive in place of Alex Albon at Monza in 2022, finishing in 9th place. However, in his first full season in F1, the Formula E and Formula 2 champion has struggled to make an impression. He's one of only 2 drivers who've yet to record a point, with his best finish being 12th at the Monaco GP, and has been out-qualified 7-2 by teammate Yuki Tsunoda. The stability of his position has been a source of concern for some time, and when Tost stated a week ago that De Vries decides his destiny with his performances in the troubled AT04, Red Bull youngster Liam Lawson was assumed to be first in line to replace him. Lawson competes in the Japanese Super Formula Series this year and is a title contender, having already won races in F2 past seasons. Red Bull announced Ricciardo's loan transfer to AlphaTauri after a strong performance in Wednesday's tyre test at Silverstone, his first outing in the RB19. "It is great to see Daniel hasn't lost any form while away from racing, and that the strides he's been making in his sim sessions translate on track," said Red Bull team principal Christian Horner. His times during the tyre test were extremely competitive. "It was a very impressive drive, and we're excited to see what the rest of the season brings for Daniel on loan at Scuderia AlphaTauri." Daniel Ricciardo's best time at the Pirelli tyre test of harder compounds that don't need blankets was a 1:27.415, 0.7 seconds off Verstappen's pole time. These are set on different tyres and in different conditions, of course, though. Red Bull and AlphaTauri cited Ricciardo as stating, "I'm stoked to be back on track with the Red Bull family." Many fans are happy to see Ricciardo returning to the grid soon, but Red Bull has now sacked or switched Formula 1 drivers 4 times in the previous 7 years, with Nyck de Vries the most recent casualty. Does this speak of a much bigger problem within the Red Bull teams? Red Bull recruited de Vries to partner Yuki Tsunoda at AlphaTauri this year, replacing the Alpine-bound Pierre Gasly. Although he was not the team's first option, IndyCar race winner Colton Herta was ineligible for an F1 Super license. In his place, de Vries emerged as a contender after a surprising point-scoring debut at the Italian Grand Prix, when he was called up on Saturday morning to replace Alex Albon. De Vries performed a great job in his Monza appearance, and that remains the case. If a driver's ability to compete in a Grand Prix was the deciding factor in whether they should be signed, de Vries was a clear winner. But acting rashly enough to decide on a single race is absurd. It's crazy that a modern F1 team can make such important decisions in this manner. This shows clear signs of cracks in their strategy. It's strange to dismiss him just a few months into the season. In some ways, Red Bull has nothing to gain by keeping him until the end of the year, and then replacing him with perhaps the same driver. However, the absence of a meaningful opportunity to alter the tide has left de Vries on the defensive. What, more importantly, did Red Bull or Marco anticipate? How far off the mark was the procedure that a rookie de Vries, despite being an admittedly comprehensive second best behind third-year Yuki Tsunoda, deserves to be fired before the summer break? Franz Tost, team leader at AlphaTauri, feels a driver requires several years to adjust to F1. The decision is surely being taken against his desires. That interference comes into play once more. This story has also revealed again that Red Bull's wide collection of young drivers hasn't recently produced any driver deserving of a junior team position in F1. Both components, higher up medaling, and Red Bull's lack of alternatives are severe issues. Not only for Red Bull, but perhaps the whole grid. Are there even enough capable drivers available now? Hopefully, the sister team's erratic decision-making in critical situations will improve because of its big restructure, with Peter Bayer arriving as CEO and Toss departing as team principal and being replaced by Lauren Mekies. However, if Marco is still alive, nothing can be ruled out. More importantly, Red Bull has now passed up 2 of its own athletes to fill a slot in its sibling organisation. Liam Lawson has been passed over twice, and whether this is due to Red Bull wishing to see through his Super Formula title campaign, or because Red Bull believes Daniel Ricciardo needs further examination, it is a vote of no confidence in the junior program. So why exactly shove Ricciardo forwards? The answer is Sergio Perez. As things are standing, it looks like Daniel Ricciardo's return to Formula 1 with AlphaTauri is only occurring because he believes it will lead to a return to Red Bull Racing. And any discussion of Red Bull's driver lineup across its 2 teams, as well as Ricciardo's potential, must include Sergio Perez. While Ricciardo certainly felt compelled to return following his painful McLaren exit and subsequent sabbatical, the 8-time Grand Prix champion is unlikely to accept a mid-season return to the struggling AlphaTauri without a greater reward in mind. Given Perez's current form, the timing of Ricciardo's return to the grid couldn't be worse. He is struggling and has failed to qualify for Q3 in 5 consecutive races, while Verstappen continues to excel in the same car. And now, even Ricciardo has driven the same car for a tyre test and has impressed the whole squad. Perez's most recent qualifying misfortunes have been particularly poor. 3 track limit violations in Q2 in Austria, losing all 3 laps and starting the Grand Prix 15th, and being knocked out in Q1 in Britain after performing poorly in a late one-stop shootout following a red flag. Red Bull's dissatisfaction was obvious in Austria, which signified a significant difference from how it had previously dismissed Perez's underachievements, even though public support remained strong in both weekends. Christian Horner, team owner of Red Bull Racing, has said unequivocally that Perez cannot be replaced. After all, he is under contract for next season. In fact, in Austria, Horner made it emphatically clear that any talk otherwise is wide of the mark. Then, in Britain last weekend, he said, "He's the type of guy that just needs an arm around his shoulder, and you work with him. And that's what we're doing. We're supporting him. We know he can do it. We know he'll get back there, and we're just trying to make sure it happens as quickly as possible." This is in Red Bull's best interest, even if Perez is just losing the squad a couple more medals and points. Verstappen continues winning, and both crowns are already guaranteed. However, Red Bull must ensure that this does not continue in the long run. Perez said he felt he had the support of Red Bull's leadership after a low-key return to 6th place in Britain. "I couldn't care less if I'm honest about that," he said as speculation about his future and Ricciardo talk. "I've been in Formula 1 for 13 years and I've seen it all. I'm not worried about any of that, and I'm mainly focused on getting my season on track and making sure I keep enjoying this. I have the full support from Helmut Marko and Christian. The whole team is fully backing me, and they know what I can do. They know my potential, and they are fully behind me." However, the realities remain that Perez is only second in the championship, with the best car by a long shot, and he has just 1 podium in 5 races. And Ricciardo will undoubtedly consider his current troubles as a potential reopening of the door to a Red Bull Racing berth. That's the only reason he'd agreed to an AlphaTauri drive during the season. The goal will be to show Red Bull that Ricciardo's McLaren troubles were just that, McLaren struggles. If he does well against Yuki Tsunoda, actually he needs to react fast and beat him, it will go a long way towards demonstrating that Ricciardo is still the force he once was. The easiest way to make that point is to go back on the grid. However, AlphaTauri is only a means to an end. Even so, crowbarring his way back into the senior squad with Verstappen will take a genuinely good performance, and it will require Perez's dismal qualifying to deteriorate into something even more dramatic. But whether it's next year or 2025, Ricciardo's goal is clear: securing the 2nd Red Bull Racing seat. And AlphaTauri right now is the best bet to secure this seat. And right now, Ricciardo is riding on a high as he impressed the whole squad during his tyre test. So, after all, AlphaTauri, and the seat he didn't want at the start of the season, may not be such a horrible long-term option for Ricciardo, as the team is slated to transition away from being a pure young driver squad under incoming CEO Peter Bayer and team leader Laurent Mekies, which also bring a new structure of upgrades and car design to Faenza for next year. This makes the AlphaTauri seat for the rest of the season, and maybe even 2024, interesting for Ricciardo. And while Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez flew out of the gates in the early races of 2023, his form plummeted when Verstappen came from behind to defeat him in Miami Grand Prix in May. Following blunders, Perez has missed Q3 for 5 races in a row, leaving Verstappen to glide to 6 consecutive victories and a 99-point advantage. While the lack of a regular second fastest team has allowed Perez to maintain his championship lead, it is apparent that if Red Bull had not had the edge, it now has with the superior RB19, its Constructors' Championship future would not have been as bright. Give the team significant competition, and Red Bull will require a number 2 driver capable of producing regular podiums, in addition to Verstappen's triumphs. After all, it was for this reason that it evicted Gasly and Albon, and brought in the Mexican in the first place. Tsunoda may not have been viewed as a genuine candidate to Perez's seat in 2024, but Ricciardo's surprise comeback may be interpreted as a method to convince Perez that he needs to step up, or else. If the Ricciardo gamble fails, it might open the door for Lawson to be brought in after a complete winter of preparation. Without destroying him in the AT04, and maybe with the Super Formula Championship under his belt. The former option is very certainly what Ricciardo has in mind. Perez now has 12 races left to prevent it from being Red Bull's as well. And Ricciardo has 12 races to show what his worth is, and if he can play second fiddle at Red Bull without creating a fuss. What are your thoughts on the switch? Is this the best thing AlphaTauri could have done during the season? Let us know in the comments down below.